Greek nouns, first and second declension, chapters 5 through 7. Nouns in English and Greek. Like English, Greek nouns are words that refer to persons, places, or things. Like English, Greek nouns are either singular or plural. And like English, Greek has three genders: feminine, masculine, and neuter. English has only natural gender, which means that the word relates to sexual gender. There are very few words that still remain in English that are gendered words. We have words like ship, which is referred to as she. But gender is mostly relegated to pronouns: he, she, or it. He being masculine, she feminine, and it neuter. All Greek nouns, on the other hand, have a single gender that is embedded within them. And this gender may or may not coincide with natural gender. For instance, our, hora, is a feminine noun, while child, teknon, is neuter, and time, chronos, is masculine. As you can see, there is very little relationship between the noun itself and the gender that represents it. Components of Greek nouns. An inflection is a way that words change according to their use in a sentence. All Greek nouns are inflected, and in this inflection there's a change in the ending of the word. The words are inflected according to case, number, and gender. The cases, and we're going to be looking at these, there are 4 of them, are nominative, genitive, dative, and accusative. The numbers are possibly singular or plural, and the gender is masculine, feminine, or neuter. English and Greek sentence structures. Let's look at the difference between English and Greek sentence structure. An English sentence is word order, that is, it reads left to right, and the elements are read and understood by their position in the sentence. The father gave a friend the son's book. So let's look at the components of it. Father is the subject, that is, the character doing the action. Gave is the verb, what the father did. Friend is an indirect object. The father did not give the friend. The father gave something to the friend. So this is the indirect object. It receives the action from the verb indirectly. Sons is a possessive. That is, it shows the ownership of the book is the sons. And book is the direct object. And the direct object receives the action from the verb. The basic sentence is, the father gave the book. An equivalent Greek sentence structure, that is, I'm just translating this into Greek, hapater edoken adelpho ta biblion huiou. We have the nominative, hapater, the father, and the nominative is always the subject of the sentence. Edoken is the verb, in this case the past tense. Adelpho is the dative, and we know it's the dative because it has a iota subscript on it. Ta biblion is the accusative, the direct object, and huiou is the genitive, which is the same as the possessive. If we look at the sentence, we'll see that in the English, the only designation of case is in the apostrophe S on sons. Otherwise, we would have to know from word order what these words are. There's nothing to identify what their case is. In Greek, however, every word has a different form, Every noun has a different form depending on its case, that is, depending upon its function in the sentence. And we can tell that by the ending exactly what its function is. So, the nominative, we can tell by its ending. We have a dative ending. We have a different accusative ending and a different genitive ending. In other words, I can take this sentence, shake it up, and throw it out again and put it together, kind of like you do refrigerator magnets, and the order would not matter very much. I could still make sense out of the sentence, even though I rearranged all of the elements, because every element has an ending that tells me what its function is in the sentence. Noun declension. A declension is a paradigm showing how words change according to case, number, and gender. And a paradigm tells us there's a predictable way in which words will change according to all these three things: case, number, and gender. There are three declensions of Greek nouns: the first, the second, and the third declension. The declension for a noun is based upon the ending of the noun root, which in grammar text is designated by an asterisk, a little star. And the root is this hypothetical word that exists out there in time from which all the other words supposedly developed. Noun stems ending in alpha or epsilon are first declension and are mostly feminine. Noun stems ending in an omicron are second declension and are either masculine or neuter. Now we're talking about the stem, the root here, and its ending. Noun stems ending in a consonant are third declension and will be studied at a later time. Endings of the declensions must be memorized. I always tell students that learning a language is like learning how to play the piano. There are a series of scales you must practice day after day after day. Bom, 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 bom. If you don't practice them, you will never make music. The only way to get there, unless you are someone who is very, very gifted, the only way to get there is to learn the scales. And then eventually, these scales can be used to make music. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to move from your memorizing scales to being able to actually read the Greek text. We're going to begin with first declension nouns. Remember that nouns can either be alpha or eta nouns because the stem of the original noun could either end with alpha or eta. Alpha nouns are those which stem ended in alpha. So although alpha is going to be a part of our ending, the fact is alpha is actually the last vowel at the end of the stem. Singular, we have nominative, genitive, dative, and accusative. Nominative is alpha. Hemera is a day, and this is the subject of the sentence. Nominative is always the subject. Genitive, the ending is a sigma, so we get alpha sigma, and we get hemeros. In this case, we'll notice that the alpha is going to retain all the way through, and this is because this word, the alpha, the ending of it, comes after either a row or a vowel, in which case it retains its ending. Don't worry so much about it right now, but it'll explain what happens with adjectives later. This is of, from, a day. These are the prepositions related to it. But the genitive is also the noun of possession. So this could also be a day's journey. Alpha iota is the dative. The iota is the iota subscript, and the iota is actually the sign of the dative. One of the gifts that you have is that any noun that ends with a iota subscript must be dative singular. Hemera, and you'll see that dative subscript there. And the prepositions are in, by, for, with, a day, or this is also the indirect object, which is what the dative also functions as. Accusative, the new is the ending, so we have on. So we get hemeron, a day, which is the direct object of the verb. The plural, we have nominative, genitive, dative, accusative. And we have alpha iota, which is the nominative plural. The iota does not subscript. Alpha is a short vowel. Don't worry about it. This is just the ending to remember. And all plurals have an alpha running all the way through. So whether or not they are alpha or eta or mixed nouns, it doesn't matter. The plurals will all be the same endings. So we get hemeri, days, the subject in plural. Genitive is omega nu. This is your second gift. All nouns, genitive plural, this is also true of adjectives, have omega nu as an ending. Now, the difficulty is going to happen with adjectives that since all the endings are omega nu, you're not going to be able to tell if they're masculine, feminine, or neuter. Hemeron is the genitive of, from, days, but again, because this is showing ownership, it is the days ends. Dative, we have the iota sigma is the ending. It does not subscript, so we get hemeris, in, by, for, with, days, and this is also the indirect object. The accusative has alpha sigma, and I know there are people out there who are going to immediately say, well, wait a minute, we've already used alpha sigma. That's the genitive ending, and you're absolutely right. The genitive and the genitive singular and the accusative plural in the first declension alpha nouns are identical. There's no explanation I'm going to go into. It's just memorize and know the things that are different in Greek. In this case, this is unusual, so memorize it. So we get hemeros, days, and this is the object of the verb. Okay, there's not very much new on this one. We have first declension eta nouns. Remember, we have two different kinds of first declension. We have roots that end with alpha or eta, and this is the result of those roots that end with eta. They are mostly feminine, just like the alpha, and the effects of the eta are felt only in the singular. Remember, the plural endings for the first declension are all going to be the same. So we have a nominative, genitive, dative, accusative. We'll get used to this structure. Nominative, genitive, dative, accusative, singular, and plural. Okay, this is number, case. Okay, ending eta, we expect an eta noun that the end of the stem would have been an eta. Phone, the eta stem is only going to be found in the singular. Sound, and this is the subject of the sentence. Genitive, the sigma is the same ending, eta sigma. Phones, and up from a sound, or this is the sounds calling. Iota subscript is always the dative singular. So we get phone, eta is a long vowel, so the iota subscripts. In, by, for with a sound. Also, this is the indirect object. The accusative, ein, the new, just like it was in the alpha. Phonein, sound, which is the object of the verb. This is the plural nominative. Just what we expect is alpha iota, because remember, in the first declension, all of the plural endings are the same. Phonai, sounds, subject. Own, this is your gift, omega nu. Remember, omega nu is the ending genitive plural for all nouns and adjectives. So we get phonon. And again, we tell it that it's the ending for all nouns and adjectives. Up from sounds or the sounds callings. We have ice, iota subscript. The iota is the calling of a dative. Phonice, in by for with sounds. And this is also the indirect object. The accusative, alpha sigma, the same. But this time, since it's different, because the eta can only exist in the singular, where in the alpha we had accusative plural alpha sigma was the same as the genitive singular alpha sigma. That's no longer true because the genitive singular is an eta sigma. Bonas, and you'll see that all first declension plural endings are the same as those that we saw with the alpha. This is sounds, the object of the object of the verb. First declension either have a root that ends with alpha or eta. Mixed nouns are those the declension contains both the alpha and eta. This is not as difficult as it seems at first, because the only thing that's affected is the genitive and dative singular. Otherwise, everything else looks like a standard alpha. If the final alpha is preceded by a consonant, the dative and the genitive singular alphas become etas. So instead of alpha, alpha sigma, alpha iota, alpha nu, we get alpha, eta sigma, eta iota, and alpha nu. So the only things that are affected are these two forms. All first plural endings are the same. I, own, eis, os. And the genitive plural for nouns and adjectives is always own. Second declension, masculine nouns. We looked at first declension nouns, and remember the ending of a first declension was either an alpha or an eta. Second declension nouns end with omicron, so the root ends with an omicron. And while first declension is usually feminine, second declension is usually either masculine or neuter. We'll look at both. The masculine. So we're going to set it up: singular, nominative, genitive, dative, accusative, nominative, genitive, dative, accusative, plural. The nominative ending is a sigma. Remember, the ending of the root is an omicron. So we're just going to add the sigma, omicron sigma. So we get logos, word, and this is the subject of the sentence. The genitive is an upsilon, so we get omicron upsilon, lagu, of from a word, or the possessive. The dative is an easy one for us because remember, any noun that ends with a iota subscript is dative singular. So the dative is omega iota subscript, and that is pronounced logo because the iota does not affect the pronunciation, and omega is there, so we have logo. In by for with the word, or this is also the indirect object. The accusative is nu, and it's the same ending as the first declension, omicron nu. Logon, then, is word, which is the direct object. The plural, we have omicron iota for the nominative, oi, and the iota does not subscript because the omicron is short. And we get logoi, and logoi is words, the subject of the sentence. Own, omega nu, our friend. Logon, the genitive plural for nouns and adjectives, is always own, and it is related to the prepositions of or from, but it can also be, since the genitive is also the possessive, it can also be the words calling. The dative has the iota with the sigma, so we get omicron iota sigma. Logois, in by for with words, but also the indirect object. The accusative is upsilon sigma, omicron upsilon sigma, lagus, and that is words, the direct object. So one way to remember these endings is to just remember the word endings and go over and over them. So we have, beginning with the nominative singular, os, u, o, on, the plural, oi, on, ois, us. So one way to do it, one way that I learned to do it, was just keep going over these. Os, u, o, on, oi, on, ois, us, over and over. And once you have them in your head, it's a lot easier. The other way to do it is remember them attached to a word. Logos, lago, lago, logon, logoi, logon, logois, logos. And that way, all you have to do is change the first part of it, but you've remembered the stem. Second declension neuter nouns. Again, these are nouns that have an omicron at the end of the root, and that's the definition of a second declension. And they're slightly different, and the interesting thing is what is the same with neuter nouns and masculine. So we're going to set it up: singular, nominative, genitive, dative, accusative, nominative, genitive, dative, accusative, plural. Now, before we go any further, I want to tell you why I keep doing this. Because one of these days on your test, you're going to be asked to give the full declension of a word. So I'm going to expect that you know how this structure works. Nominative, genitive, dative, accusative, singular are the four cases. Nominative, genitive, dative, accusative, plural are the four cases in the plural, because all of them have unique endings. So let's look at it. The neuter ending is new or no ending at all. In this case that we're looking at, we're going to look at it with new as an ending, and that's usually the ending for nouns. And the word that we're going to be using is ergon, which means work, and this is the subject of this sentence, ergon. U is the genitive, omicron upsilon, and you'll notice that it is identical to the genitive in the masculine. Ergo is of or from work. It's also the genitive meaning possessive. Iota subscript after the omega tells us that the dative singular, ergo, in by for with work, and also the indirect object. The accusative, again, is new all the way through. And ergon is work, and this is the direct object. Now, one of the things that you notice right away is the nominative and accusative endings are the same in the neuter. So the nominative accusative endings in the singular are on and on. Nominative ending plural is unusual. You just have to memorize this one, is an alpha. Remember, we think of alphas, we think of first declension, but this is the nominative plural ending. And we need to, one reason that when we learn our vocabulary, we have to learn what gender the noun is, because if we don't know what gender it is, we probably would assume that if we saw this word, it is going to be feminine. So you'll see what the word looks like. It is erga, which looks very much like a feminine noun. But we would have known from our vocabulary, we would have memorized ergon in our vocabulary, and the vocabulary is always in the nominative singular. And it also tells us what the gender of the noun is. This is works, the plural, and it is the subject. Our good friend, omega nu, genitive plural. It's the same for all. Of, from, works, and this is also the genitive possessive. Omegios, ois, ergois, and in by for with works, also the indirect. The dative again is the same as that of the masculine. Ending alpha, not surprisingly, the same as the nominative, because in the second declension, neuter nouns, alpha nominative is always the same as the accusative. Actually, this is true of all neuter nouns in the first, second, and third declension. The nominative and accusative are always the same. So when we get to the third declension, this is something that's going to follow all the way through. Erga, and we'll note the notes that the nominative and accusative are the same, and they are both alpha. They're not both alpha because that's the ending. They're both alpha because the nominative is alpha and the accusative takes the same ending. And works is the direct object. Parsing a verb. Now, before we even begin the idea of parsing a verb, we have to be able to read our vocabulary to understand the information that is in it. So let's look at a very simple one that we've looked at before, ergon. We looked at this as a second declension neuter, remember? And this is the information that you're going to have in your lexicon and in your vocabulary. So let's learn to read it, and if we read it, then we might be able to understand how to parse it. So the first thing that we have is ergon, and this is called the lexical form. That is, this is the nominative singular form, and if I were to look it up into a lexicon or a dictionary, this is the form that I could look it up under. I could not look it up any under the other cases because it wouldn't show up. Now, there are lexicons that have all of it, but this is, and this is going to be helpful for you, in the back of your book you have a lexicon. The lexicon is going to require that you go into it through the lexical form to find other forms, okay? Now, afterwards we have this dash and this omicron upsilon. And this tells us what the genitive ending is. In this case, it tells us that this is a second declension and that the word in the genitive would be ergu. The third piece of information is this ta. And the ta is the definite article which gives gender. So within the vocabulary word, the way we find out what its gender is to look at its definite article at the end. In this case, the definite article is neuter. And this is the kind of information that we want to put onto a flashcard, or if you already have flashcards, it'll already be there. But if you put this on the front, flip it over, what you want to do then is put the definition, work, deed, action. Okay? And this is the lexical definition or lexical meaning. Parsing a noun. Now, with the information that we have for the second and first declension endings, as well as the information that we just had on how to read a lexical ending, we can parse any word. And we're going to parse those words according to a very specific structure. And I need you to learn this, not only because it's essential in order to read Greek, but because it's going to be on your quiz, so you just well learn it. Every quiz that you're going to have is going to have parsing as an essential component of it. So let's learn how to parse, and we'll begin with parsing a noun. Now, the categories are going to be broken up by case, and remember, the cases are nominative, genitive, dative, and accusative, and within the parsing, putting the first letter is sufficient. We have number, and we have singular or plural. We have gender, masculine, feminine, or neuter. We have the lexical form, and the lexical form is your vocabulary word that you learned. And the lexical meaning. Now, in your homework, Mouse is going to ask you for the meaning of the word. But with nouns, that's very difficult. It's very, very broad. So I'm going to just ask you to define the lexical form. Okay, let's go ahead. So we have the word lagu. The training that I want you to see is what we care about is that ending because it tells us everything about this noun. So the ending is omicron upsilon. And that ending happens to be a genitive. Can you guess? Singular. And what is the gender of masculine? So we have genitive, singular, masculine. The lexical form of this is logos, and its meaning is word. The next word that we have is erga. Remember, there's always going to be a problem trying to remember what this final vowel is. Gee, that sure looks like feminine. So we would have learned from our vocabulary that this is a neuter noun. And it's plural because the neuter plural ending is an alpha. And since the nominative and accusative, the singular, are always the same, this could either be in the nominative or accusative. It comes from ergon, meaning work. The next one is doxone. Now, the ending here we really recognize, because remember that omega nu is genitive plural. So we know automatically that this is a genitive plural noun. The problem is this ending doesn't give us any hint at what the gender is. So, of course, we would have learned this from a vocabulary word. We would have learned that it's feminine, and the lexical form is doxa. And that means glory. Phone, well, just by looking at this, remember the rule. If you ever see a iota subscript at the end of a noun, it is dative singular. Don't even have to think about it. And we know from our vocabulary that this is a feminine noun. It comes from phone, which means sound or voice. The definite article. The definite article. In English, the form of the definite article does not depend upon the noun that it modifies or makes definite. The is always the. In Greek, however, the definite article must agree with the noun in case, number, and gender. And this is going to be very important for you as you go along, because even if you can't figure out the case, number, and gender of the noun, the definite article is always going to tell you all of that information. Greek has no indefinite article, equivalent to the a or a in English. In most cases, a noun in Greek without a definite article is indefinite. The paradigm for the definite article in Greek is 212, meaning that the masculine article is in the second declension. Feminine articles are eta first declension, and neuter articles are also in the second declension. So we get 212, masculine, feminine, neuter. You're going to see this used throughout Greek as we go along. Okay, let's look at the 212 declension of ha, he, ta, the definite article. These are the nominative forms of the definite article. Ha being masculine, second declension. He being feminine, first declension, eta. And ta being second declension, neuter. Beneath here are the colorful endings. These are the endings of the nouns that we've studied so far. Masculine, second declension. Feminine, first declension, and this is first declension eta specifically. And neuter, second declension. There is very little difference between the endings for the definite article than for regular nouns. I want to show these to you and show you how easy it is to remember them. And if you remember them, you'll actually remember all the endings for the nouns that are important. So let's look. The masculine singular nominative ending in the definite article is omicron rather than omicron sigma. Remember, the word logos, which was the nominative singular masculine, had an omicron sigma ending. The masculine singular nominative ending for the definite article loses that sigma. The nominative and accusative endings actually have two forms. The neuter form can either be new or no ending at all. But we're going to look at it as if we're losing something. And we think of the noun ergon, which had a new ending. And remember, it also had the same ending for the nominative and accusative because neuter nouns are always the same in the nominative and the accusative. So let's lose the new both in the nominative and the accusative. Okay? These are the only changes we're going to make for the endings, which clearly we can remember. Now let's look at changes. That the article must begin with either rough breathing or a tau. Now remember, rough breathing is Greek's way of doing an H. If a vowel begins with rough breathing, it has an H in front of that word. So in a sense, we can think of all definite articles must begin with an H or a T. Nominative masculine and feminine articles begin with rough breathing. So let's look at the nominative masculine, rough. Nominative feminative singular, rough. So whatever happens in the singular is going to happen in the plural as well. So we get oi becomes hoi, I becomes high. These are the definite articles. Okay? Now, all other articles start with a tau. That is, articles that do not begin with rough breathing must begin with a tau. So let's look at the masculine, and we'll just fill this in with tau. And we get ha, tu, to, ton, hoi, ton, tois, tus. We'll do the same thing with filling in the feminine. And we get hey, taste, tay, tain, high, tone, tice, toss. And in the neuter, since the neuter nominative does not begin with rough breathing, that means all of the neuter definite articles begin with tau. So we'll just put it all in all the way down. And we get ta, tu, to, ta. Nominative and accusative are always the same. Ta, ton, tois, ta. Remember, genitive and dative endings are the same in the masculine and neuter. We just kind of mentioned that, but now that we have a 2-1-2 declension, we can see how this works. The masculine, genitive and dative are to and to, which means that the neuter must also be to and to. Same with the plural. The genitive is tone and tois, so the neuter must also be tone and tois. Also remember that the genitive plural endings are own in all declensions. Vocabulary, chapters 6 and 7. Now within the vocabulary, I am going to pronounce the vocabulary word 3 times. The vocabulary will be set up as it is in your lexicon. That is the word with a comma, the dash, the genitive, and then another comma, and the definite article. Any word that does not exist in this form is not a noun. Nouns only take this form in the lexicon. So as we go through, we're going to be able to see which ones are nouns and which ones aren't immediately. So let's begin. Chapter 6. Agape. 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 Agape is a first declension feminine, and it means love. Alas. 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 Alas is a pronoun, and it means other or another. We will look at this later. Basileia. basileia, basileia. Basileia is a first declension noun. It is feminine, and it means kingdom. De, de, de. De is a conjunction meaning but or and is a postpositive. That means it will always come as the second word in the sentence. Even if it begins a sentence, it will come as the second word. En, en, en. En is a preposition meaning in, on, or among that takes the dative. We will be looking at this when we are doing prepositions. Ergon, ergon, ergon. Second declension, neuter. Ergon is work, deed, or action. Kairos, kairos, kairos. Second declension, masculine. And kairos means an appointed time or season, as opposed to chronos, which is time that is measured. Chronos is about the quality of time. So it's often related to religious events or time, or specific seasonal times. Nun, nun, nun. Most commonly, nun is used as an adverb meaning now. If it's used as a noun, it means the present. Ha, he, ta. Ha, he, ta. Ha, he, ta. And of course, this is the definite article. Hati, hati, hati. Hati is a conjunction meaning that, since, or because. U, uk, uch. U, uk, uch. U, uk, uch. U is a negative particle that means not, and if u should come before a consonant, it stays u. If it comes before smooth breathing, it is uk. If it's before rough breathing, it's uch. For instance, u basileia, uk ergon, and uch hora. Phone, phone, phone. Phone is a first declension, feminine, and the noun means sound or voice. Christos, Christos, Christos. Christos, genitive is ou. It is a masculine noun, and Christos means Christ, Messiah, anointed one. It's important to remember that its first meaning is anointed one and Messiah, because this is the whole argument about who Jesus is, whether or not Jesus is the Messiah. The Christ, the Christos, comes from the Greek, but it's actually Messiah we care about. Hora, hora, hora. First declension, feminine. Note the rough breathing. Hora means an hour, occasion, or moment. Chapter 7. Hamartia, hamartia, hamartia. First declension, feminine. Hamartia means sin, rough breathing. Arche, arche, arche. First declension, feminine, beginning. Gara, gara, gara. God is another post-positive, which means for or then. Apen, apen, apen. Apen is a verb, a past tense that we will study sometime later, and it is third person, so it means he, she, it, said. The reason that you're getting these verbs at this time is because in your exercises, these are basic words in the exercises that are going to come over and over and over. So just learn this. Don't worry about what form of verb it is. Just learn apen as he, she, it, said. Ace, ace, ace. Ace is a preposition. It means in, into, among, and object is in the accusative. Exousia, exousia, exousia. First declension, feminine. Exousia is authority or power. Euangelion, euangelion, euangelion. Second declension, neuter. Note euangelion. The double gamma makes it a gamma nasal. The good news, the gospel, it literally means good news. Iesus, Iesus, Iesus. This is the second declension, masculine, and of course, Jesus. And the word is Jesus, but it comes from Joshua. So Jesus is Joshua, the Savior. Kurios, kurios, kurios. Second declension, masculine. Kurios is Lord, little Lord, master, or sir. So it has all this range of meaning. So just because Jesus is called Kurios does not mean it necessarily means capital L, Lord. In fact, that's just the opposite. In the Septuagint, Lord, we're talking about God here. So Kurios, Lord, is still used in the New Testament. May, may, may. May is another particle that means not. Remember, ook, and we'll look at later how it's specifically used. Uranas, uranas, uranas. Second declension, masculine. Uranas is heaven or sky. Hutas, hutas, hutas. Hutas means this, and the plural means these. This is the demonstrative pronoun. Su, su, su. Su means you, singular. This is nominative. We will get to prepositions in the future. Huias, huias, huias. Second declension, masculine. Huias is son or descendant.